Xavier, do we have any idea what crossed the Polish sky in?
Mostly it's kamikaze drones like Shaheds. Ukrainians closely monitor their airspace. They share images that allow the residents. When you go to Ukraine, you can see exactly what's flying over us. Kamikaze drones travel at 250, 300 kilometers per hour, providing a good warning in real time. And there they could already see these drones heading toward Poland. And what's interesting, or rather what's dramatic, is that in this case, it's exactly what we're seeing, that there can't be any mistake. Or, for example, there were several times when Ukrainian electronic warfare tools caused drones to get lost and end up in other territories, notably Romania and Poland. This time we have entries into Polish territory from several different directions. That means it's not just a drone that went off course. There are actually Russian kamikaze drones with bombs on board. We're talking about armed systems that entered Polish airspace from several directions, including coming back through Belarus. So it's really a deliberate intention by Russia to escalate once again, to try to scare us. The big difference compared to the previous case where we just watched these drones fly over and didn't take any action. For the first time, there's a reaction and interception. These drones are destroyed once they enter our airspace. And that's really the big fuss. No.
Don't leave us. Xavier Titelman, Emmanuel Ducrot, you mentioned some precedents.
So that we can really understand what's happening in Poland, what has happened in Poland, were the previous incidents of a different scale, and did they happen in other European countries? Yes, so
Until now, we only had isolated incidents with 1 or 2 drones crossing over. For example, in Romania, there are these port cities on the river that are regularly targeted. Just a few hundred meters away, it fell on the ground in Romania. We had cases in Poland that were further and further inside Polish territory. In particular, a few weeks ago, one landed less than 150 kilometers from Warsaw. Surprisingly, we saw these Russian drones each time in the area. And if it goes a few kilometers behind the lines, that's something. You might call them navigation errors, but when it travels straight for dozens of kilometers for over an hour, that's questionable. In Polish territory there, we know very well that there was already an intention at that time. We also had cases over Lithuania, which was flown over, so we do have a repetition. But here, it's the first coordinated, deliberate, and massive attack on a NATO country by these Russian drones. Previously, we might have said they didn't do it intentionally. This is the first time where there can be no doubt whatsoever about the Russian intention to escalate. It's to get us more involved or make us afraid so we stop supporting Ukraine. It's a political message. 6 drones, 8 drones. You have to understand that these are only the ones that were not intercepted by Ukraine. Because to get from Russia to Poland, they still had to fly for more than 2 hours over Ukrainian territory. And you can imagine that more than 90% of these drones are destroyed by the Ukrainians before reaching Poland. In essence, Ukraine now protects NATO with its highly advanced air defense and interception capabilities. So if the Ukrainians hadn't done the job of intercepting the vast majority of the drones, maybe there would have been 10 times more drones entering Polish territory last night. This is very serious. What do you think?
Is the Polish army on alert, mainly just the
reaction last night? For the first time they responded, which proves they were ready. According to the information we have, they scrambled at least 8 F-16 fighter jets, and you know that the allies of these eastern countries also provide reassurance with their strength. For example, France ensures the Baltic air policy. Well, in Poland, there is a Dutch F-35 as well as a Dutch refueling aircraft that allowed these planes to be accompanied so they could stay in the air longer. There was a radar plane that we could track on flight radar 24 almost all night, and we could really see its movements and trajectories, which means they were actually following the drones. There was a second Italian radar plane that was dispatched. So overall, we still had a European Air Force that was available, that was engaged, and that arrived on the scene very, very quickly. In the next few minutes, that's the response I would have expected during earlier violations. And intercepting planes, aircraft, and missiles that violate our airspace is something that is normal. Today offers a chance to improve. That means there's the possibility to intercept these drones as soon as they cross the border, or even once again intercept them with air defense batteries that are positioned on the border. We could set up a buffer zone. We could decide to intercept these drones as soon as they come within 20 or 30 kilometers of the border. That would protect Ukrainians and ensure our own security. Xavier, I have a
question for you. It's true that information is coming in minute by minute, hour by hour for you. It was indeed the Polish defense that neutralized those devices. It was the Polish planes. That's what
the Polish say. In any case, that's what the Poles understand. There are reports of missiles that were fired. We clearly distinguish these types of sky mopeds. In this case, the Shahed drones, when you go to Ukraine, you can hear them and recognize them. Some people can distinguish between the sound of a moped and a missile being fired, showing a real difference between them. And with these drones, we can see that there is destruction. We see debris hitting the ground in the few images we have so far. So does that mean it confirms for us that these drones were destroyed in flight, either because they were hit by a missile that was fired, for example, by an F-16, or because they were shot down from the ground by a defense battery? Yes, Xavier Teitelman, one.
More question. It seems that the Polish army deployed on the ground has therefore found debris not far from the Polish border with Belarus. And what does that change operationally? What does that mean? Russia is now using Polish airspace to strike eastern Ukrainian cities. That's how it is. That's also an escalation to fear and to worry about. So unfortunately, it's something
they've already done several times. They attacked Ukraine from behind. That means it's not the first time that the airspace has been violated by a drone. That previous times they were already on Polish territory, but they've already been in Polish territory to go back to attack the empty space from behind. But the Ukrainians, their air defense, their radar, they're facing Russia. And when something comes at them from behind, they're almost blind. Previously, we allowed those drones to pass and they returned over Ukraine, killing civilians. Unfortunately, it also happened in Moldova, where the Moldovans are saying it. Our airspace was violated by missiles that passed through the south to reach the rear area near Odessa. So that's something that has happened several times in the past. If they are doing it on a larger scale today, unfortunately, we just have to acknowledge it. But if we finally allow ourselves to intercept these missiles, that's obviously a good thing. And I'm going to add something that is absolutely incredible. The country that intercepted the most Shahed drones on its territory, it was Belarus. Belarus, when there was a missile passing by, they intercepted it. We were just there watching them go by, and Belarus allowed itself to intercept them. But here as well, in this particular case, Belarus had a violation of its airspace. These drones traveled through Belarus to reach Poland. Now, the Russians have no limits on violating airspace. Previously, it was to surprise or intimidate Ukrainians. Here, very clearly, it's a mass, a quantity, and it's deep inside Polish territory. They make us believe that it's not just a drone that was going to turn around to take the Ukrainians by surprise, it's to fly over our territories. The
Solution of the
buffer zones that you...
As we discussed earlier, has NATO or those countries already considered it? So in the first case where a
drone or a Russian missile at the time had fallen in Poland, there was that possibility. We wondered about the possibility that our air defenses, which are on the border, could intercept these missiles when they are 10 or 20 kilometers inside Ukrainian territory. And in that case, we ensure our security. There are also major projects that today are not led by politicians, but in which many military personnel and many former politicians are involved. For example, there's Sky Shield. The idea is, for instance, to say France protects Lviv. Naturally, anything near Lviv would be intercepted. This allows us to save civilians, to protect civilians, but it also allows us to protect Poland, which is behind it. There is also a desire in France, shown by a petition involving the former Air Force second in command. Some people are pushing for this solution, but ultimately politicians must decide. Militarily, on the ground, this has long been expected. And very clearly, the army is ready to carry out an external operation of this kind, because the air defense we've given Ukraine isn't enough, but it shows it's effective. The Russians might try to shoot it, but they can't destroy it. Deploying to support Ukrainian air defense while protecting our own airspace is both legitimate and expected. Some extra info as the news is moving quickly this morning. In reality, the Polish are now saying that there have been 19 violations of their airspace. That's absolutely huge. That removes any doubt for those who could still say it was a mistake or a false flag. As if the Ukrainians had missiles available to fire them at Poland, obviously it's the Russians. We also discovered that there were Russian and Lithuanian chips in some drones. That means the Russians have been preparing these attacks at least since July, so they can regain control of their drones once they enter the airspace. We also have information about the resources that have been deployed. The Poles also sent helicopters like the Mi-8, the Mi-17, and even Black Hawks to help with the destruction. And also, there's the invocation of Article 4 by Donald Tusk, by the Polish president, which means a meeting of political leaders from other NATO countries to decide if we'll proceed further and possibly invoke Article 5. And as for me, you know my point of view. Sky Shield protects the Polish people and prevents airspace violations. So setting up protection of Ukrainian airspace by our forces voluntarily on Ukrainian territory without engaging in combat with the Russians, staying very far away, close to the borders, it's something we're pushing for. And there are a lot of people who would like to see it happen. So I'm putting the petition in the comments of this video because it's really something that is increasingly necessary today to avoid this escalation and to achieve peace. Read the text of this petition carefully. All right, I'll see you very soon. All right, I'll see you very soon.